Hello and welcome everyone. This is Taco Movie Talks. I am brought to you here with our special guest Ethan, aka Film Junkie. Check out his YouTube channel down in the description below. Ethan, how are you doing today? Any good movies you've seen this week?
I'm doing all right. I did recently watch another one of Martin McDonagh's movies. He's the guy who made Banshees this year, but his last movie he made was Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri.
Mm.
I watched that and loved it very similarly to Banshees.
I I remember when that came out, and I very much enjoyed it as well. That had a lot of Oscar kind of discussion around it when it came out, and I was surprised that it was the same director,
Yeah,
because he made, is it pronounced in Bruges or is it pronounced in Bruges?
in Bruges, yeah.
In Bruges, okay. Um, it has that very kind of Irish feel to it. Um,
Yes.
and that one was more kind of a like, southern country-ish feel to it. But I think, he captures those very distinctive cultures really well. And I think that's why it worked for Three Billboards.
Absolutely. I really like In Bruges. I also really like Seven Psychopaths, which is a movie that he did after In Bruges, which is not really talked about a lot, but I actually really enjoy that movie. It's probably his least best movie, but I think overall he's extremely consistent with how good he is, and he continues to get better.
This movie and, the two movies we're discussing is Decision to Leave and Banshees of Inisherin. And these are two very, very highly praised 2022 movies. And I think they're going to be getting a lot of Oscar discussion this year. And I very much enjoyed both. And I would assume, hopefully safely, that you're kind of in agreement with that. Am I correct, Ethan?
Absolutely. I definitely prefer both of these to the movies that we discussed before. Not that Crimes of the Future or Everything Everywhere All at Once are bad, but I think these are some of my favorites of the whole year, easily.
And, these are two very much, you know, this generation of movie makers that are pretty well established. And, I think Decision to Leave, Park Chan Wook, that's one of your favorite directors. Am I correct in that?
Yes, it is. He is easily one of my favorite directors.
And he is, hopefully, I'm correct on this too, very well known for the Vengeance trilogy, Old Boy, Lady Vengeance, and is it Mr. Vengeance?
Yeah, Mr. Vengeance. Mr. Vengeance, Old Boy, Lady Vengeance. That's how it goes. Mostly Old Boy. Old Boy is hailed as maybe one of the greatest movies ever made.
So, both of these directors, honestly, I have very limited exposure to, um, but they have very distinctive style and a lot of talent between them, I think. And I feel like you have a good amount of expertise. And, could you kind of go into what you really like about both of these directors, respectively?
Of course. So I'll start with Martin McDonough. I always get him confused with Kenneth Branagh, who is also an Irish filmmaker, and I think he's a bad filmmaker. He recently did the movie Belfast, which got a lot of
Mm.
praise from the Oscars and stuff. And you watch the movie, and it's just very mediocre and very cheesy. But Martin McDonough he's so talented and so underrated for with this movie and Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri in particular, he's able to create this ultimatum that causes a ripple effect of dark emotions brewing in a lot of different people, and he's able to do that so well. Like he understands that feeling, and yeah, Banshees is probably where he succeeded the best so far.
Hmm.
But Three Billboards is also fantastic. In Bruges and Seven Psychopaths really showcase his early talents and showcase that he had something to look forward to. And with his the second half of his career so far, he's really proven himself.
And then Park Chan Wook, what do you think are, some of his best characteristics as a filmmaker?
I just think Park Chan-wook is a genius. Like his his seemingly like natural talent to pace a story is so immaculate. And again, he's gotten better at it. And he always puts little moral dilemmas in his films that are so well realized once you look deep into the surface. I think he's an all-around master.
Yeah, so in Decision to Leave, it was one of the films where, as I was looking at it, it stood out for a lot of elements that make film great to be a great example of it being done very well. I thought the writing was very really good and tight in Decision to Leave. It was a very interesting story, and it kind of felt like it had a new take on a story that you're familiar with, but just that new take, it almost makes it feel like it's like we're stepping on new ground, and that's a really you have to be very creative to be able to do something like that. And anytime that is done, it feels monumental. I thought the editing was really great, and the cinematography was probably the standout of everything, in my opinion. And on top of that, I also thought the sound design, very simply put, was really really good. It wasn't something that was like super in your face, but the subtleties of it and the nuance was really really spectacular. I think it all came together really really good in this film. Was there anything that really stood out to you, Ethan, that you really enjoyed about this?
The transition shots,
Mm,
like the way he transitions from one scene to the next, my mind was blown every single time.
I
He,
agree. There was some really simple ones, and he did them spectacularly.
yeah, just as a pure filmmaker, he's insane. He's so good.
In my opinion, I think this is a very good example of a film that's going to age really, really well. Just
Yeah.
because it's executed so well. What do
Very
you?
similar to something like his previous movie, which was The Handmaiden,
Mm-hmm,
a movie that is similarly amazingly directed and also had a story that is kind of progressivist, but also very fascinating and interesting from a moral and emotional perspective. 6 years later, 6 years later, it's continuously called the best movie of that year alone
mm-hmm.
and one of the best films of that decade. So I feel like similarly, Decision to Leave. I don't think it hasn't got nearly as much praise as The Handmaiden, even though I think it's almost just as good.
Would you like to do the honors of giving a quick summation of this film, Ethan?
Yes. So it is about a detective who is investigating a murder, and he slowly starts to. It's a hiker. It's the murder of a hiker, and he starts to suspect that the hiker's wife is seemingly is seemingly more involved in the murder of her husband than you're led to believe.
And the directions that ultimately takes us to, I think, are really, really interesting directions, and the some of the conflicts too that brings about, where the revelation occurs that she was the murderer. It brings apart, like it's not the type of conflict that you see in a ton of movies where he feels completely duped by her because she, pretty much convinces him that he didn't do it, and then she helps him with other crimes, and then kind of a spark emerges that unveils the entire plot. And I thought that emotional core of the movie and that kind of one sticking point, it's one of the most interesting kind of questions posed by a movie in quite some time. What did you think about that? I mean, was that part of the movie very compelling for you as well?
Absolutely. But I don't want to spoil too much because I feel like going in mostly blind is the best way to go about it because it is uh, very similar to The Handmaiden. You feel like you feel like there is an end way sooner than the end is actually
Mm-hmm.
where the end is actually, and you get the suspicion that things aren't over yet and that something insane is about to happen. And he Park Chan-wook is continuously putting you on edge the whole time. I remember Tarantino said that a story is something that is continuously unfolding, and I feel like Park Chan-wook understands that more than most film, like 95% of filmmakers do.
Yeah, I think you said that perfectly, because, like you said, it did feel like, you know, the story could have just stopped at a certain point because there was so much that had happened, and it continues to go, and continues to take you on twists and turns where you don't really know what to expect. I think, in my opinion, this is one that I'm going to have to rewatch to get a full appreciation from. And I think part of that comes from not having seen a lot of Park Chan Wook's movies and not kind of, just completely being immersed in it on the first go. It's it is a lot to take in. Did you have that feeling at all? Do you think this is one that you're going to need a second watch to fully kind of marinate in it? Or did your exposure to Pork Chan Wook in the past kind of aid you in knowing how he tells a story and kind of to buckle your seatbelt for what was about to unfold?
I definitely feel like I would have to rewatch it again because I had to rewatch The Handmaiden to get a full appreciation for that film, as well as Old Boy. You have to rewatch a lot of his work to get more of an appreciation out of it, but they still make great first impressions. Very
Mm-hmm.
similar to David Lynch, I feel,
Mm-hmm.
where I watch his films for the first time. I'm confused, but I still really enjoy them. But then I come back and rewatch them, I get a whole new appreciation for his work and him as a director. And it's the same with Park Chan-wook. Um, I definitely want to rewatch Decision to Leave in the future. I don't want to use get a movie account though, so I'll probably just like get it on a different site.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't wait to rewatch it again because it is it's so enjoyable to watch just on a surface level that you could definitely come back to it.
I completely agree. Yeah, there's so much. The execution of damn near everything is top level, and the stories, like you said, it's so interesting, and there's so much to dig into that I feel like it really does call for a rewatch. But I kind of want to get, from an overarching kind of, you know, surface level description of how you saw it. Do you think this movie was very much trying to expand and explore the dynamics of why people become attracted to one another and what can lead to the downfalls or pitfalls of relationships? Do you think that was what the heart of this movie was about?
Absolutely. There's a there's a theory surrounding this movie. It's the mountain versus the sea. I don't think it's a theory. It's just like how the movie is constructed under the surface.
Mm-hmm.
The mountain versus the sea. So a guy dies on a he's a hiker. He hikes a mountain. Um, and the movie ends in at the sea. The wife of the hiker even says that she hates mountains. She's more to the sea. And a mountain is something that is never changing. It
Mm-hmm.
is it, it is a singular goal that you have to conquer, and it doesn't change. I mean, like obviously there's like tectonics and stuff like that, but it is uh, it is purely a stable uh, thing. The sea is the exact opposite of that. It is ever changing. It is constantly moving. It is seeing ending, and that dichotomy uh, it presents the synonymous um, the it sort of acts as like a monolith for not a monolith but a stand-in for how people connect and how and what type of person is a specific person, and that I feel carries a lot of weight into the story. This is not my idea, by the way. I watched the video and it seems to make perfect sense. There's a lot of symbolism about the sea and the versus the mountain theories, and I just wanted to talk about that also.
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned it because it would have definitely slipped my mind, but the movie does allude to it quite a lot. And the different personality types of these people, that is basically that defines the battlefield of how the relationships all play out. And our two main characters, the detective and the widow, I guess for lack of a better descriptor, they have such a fruitful relationship at some parts, but it seems like ultimately the fact that maybe one is more steadfast and non-changing while the other is more fluid and ever-changing seems to kind of lead to a huge conflict in this movie. Is that kind of the way you see it? Did you feel like the detective was more of a mountain as the description goes?
Well, he calls himself more of a sea person, but it's more complicated than that. And so that's what I like about the movies that it takes that very uh, dichotomous uh, comparison and kind of makes it nuanced
Mm-hmm.
in an emotional perspective. And that's something that I really appreciate in movies and in people in general. They have very nuanced takes, very complex, well thought out ideas that are not, as I like to call it, black and white.
I agree, and also I thought, especially in the second half of the movie, the widow's decision making left me I felt like I always was one step behind where the story was going. I could never get ahead of where the action was going, and it and for it to be creatively crafted as opposed to like just kind of moronic and like not nonsensical, that that's very, very impressive. And it always made, just because I couldn't figure out exactly why it happened, it always seemed like it was kind of based from a place where there was an explanation, but I was just a step behind it. And I kind of love that about story making, when it can still catch you with surprises throughout it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely the best parts about a story.
Ethan, I want to kind of get your thoughts, any final thoughts on this movie, as well as your rating. And on top of that, you know, I think eventually we want to do an episode where we kind of propose movies as nominated that we think would be good nominations for certain awards. Do you feel like there's any categories that this would fit very well into?
As far as best of the year,
Yeah, as far as I don't remember all the Oscar. I think editing, supporting actor, best actor, best
yeah,
screenplay.
sound,
Yes, yes, yeah.
screenplay, stuff like that. Um, yeah, that would be very cool to do that. Have our own Oscars because the Oscars are trash. We have better opinions than the Oscars. But yeah, no, I'd be totally down for that. As far as you said you want me to give final thoughts on Decision to Leave.
Yeah.
I Not only is this movie amazing with telling a story about relationships, but it's great at telling a story about uh, the police system and uh, sort of corruption and all the undersurface nuanced takes that Park Chan-wook has, complete with gorgeous cinematography, genius filmmaking all around, and from a surface level, it's just so well done and technically masterful that it is my favorite movie of 2022. I still think Old Boy and The Handmaiden are a little better as far as Park Chan-wook movies, but it is not far off at all. I would absolutely give this a 5 out of 5.
So before I go, Ethan, I want to ask you a quick question because this is specific to me. Not that I want to avoid Lady Vengeance or Mr. Vengeance, but do you think you can fully appreciate Old Boy if you just watch that film?
Absolutely, none of the Vengeance trilogy is connected. It's only it's thematically connected
Okay.
with Vengeance.
Okay, because I want to watch Old Boy, and I've only been holding back because I was going to try to watch all three in a row. But that is definitely good news because I can kind of put that ahead, and I also want to watch Handmaiden because of how much you appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely watch all three of the Vengeance trilogy.
Okay, I definitely will. I gave this one a 4 out of 5. One of the big reasons is because I think this threw out a lot that I wasn't able to fully appreciate on first viewing. And that really ties into why I said I think I want to rewatch this because so much was executed very, very well. You know that it's very carefully crafted, and you know there's a lot going on with the writing that I think I was able to get a a bite of it, but I wasn't able to get the full meal, so to speak. And I don't think that's a deficiency on Park Chan Wook. I just think I wasn't fully, able to appreciate it all on first viewing. So I think that's a score that's definitely going to go up in the future. I don't know how high up, maybe a 5, but altogether, I think so much of this movie was very, very well done that I am looking forward to watching it again already. Do
Yeah.
you, for that reason though, Ethan, and I want to kind of get your gauge on this. I think how much there is to experience and take in on first viewing and the fact that it might take 2 viewings to fully appreciate this, I can see the Oscars snubbing this pretty hard in a lot of categories. What are
I
your
think
thoughts?
they're I think they're absolutely going to snub it. I there's not a lot of people who really know Park Chan-wook's name. Definitely not as much as Bong Joon-ho, who famously was the first non-English speaking director to not only win, I think he's the it's the first non-English speaking film, Parasite, to win Best Picture at the Oscars. Um, it definitely deserved it, but I feel like Park Chan-wook is a consistent genius, and I feel like Decision to Leave is also going to get snubbed because I don't think it even released in like nation. It didn't have a national theater release even, as far as I'm concerned. So I don't think it's gonna do. I don't think a lot of people are gonna know it. A lot of people know Parasite by this point, so but who knows? Maybe it'll get like Best International Feature.
That's true. And both directors that you mentioned, they're kind of spearheading what a lot of people consider to be a South Korean film renaissance. Do you think that Parasite's victory as Best Picture is going to really kind of progress the movement and the Oscars are going to be more, I'll say, enlightened, I guess, to these international pictures, especially in South Korea, moving forward?
Seems that they have gotten better with nominating foreign language films. Obviously, last year there was Drive My Car,
Mm.
and The Worst Person in the World got a bunch of different. It got a couple of nominations that weren't uh, Best Foreign Language Film, even though The Worst Person in the World is amazing, and it should have gotten more because it was my favorite movie of last year. But it definitely Parasite definitely helped people enter the world of foreign language film a lot more than they used to.
I, I, I feel like and I'm not an Oscars expert by any means. I think for a long time I just kind of heard probably who was the best actor, and what won the best movie, if that. But I think the way they had nominated for so long, I felt like I was under the impression that they only nominated American films for a long time, just because of what would actually win. And when you look back at how many foreign films are, arguably some of the best films of all time, it is it's kind of a head scratcher as to how underperforming they do in the Oscars. And I don't know if you know this, I don't for sure. But I mean, have they always nominated foreign films? Is that a new phenomenon? Or is it just kind of indicative of how American audiences consume cinema?
Well, I feel that obviously technology has really helped with uh, the wider spread of attention that foreign language cinema is getting. Um, I'm not even sure how Parasite got this big. Well, I mean, he has done a couple of English speaking films like Okja or Snowpiercer. Um, but as far as like, because Park Chan-wook also made his own English speaking movie called Stoker, um, which I'm not a particular fan of, but uh, I I struggle to see how Bong Joon-ho has been getting all this attention and Park Chan-wook hasn't. I think both of them absolutely deserve attention, but to answer your question earlier, I think it's just the increase in technology, but also the fact that more and more people from other countries have been like more vocal about it. Because there has been the best international release category. I think it's been the Oscars have been hosting that award for like 70 years now. So it's not a new concept,
Hmm.
but like presenting it to the major awards like Best Picture is I guess it's just a new idea.
Yeah, I think you brought up a really good point that I definitely discounted at first thought. Um, just seeing foreign cinema for a long time probably was very difficult, and you would have had to really do a lot of research on your own to even find out who is worth watching, like who would match your taste of movies very well. You know, we live in a time period where everything is so accessible. You can kind of, you know, you can use Letterbox, IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, all of the above, and kind of get an idea of, you know, what films you would really like. And it's led me to really broaden my horizons. And I think that the time period that we're living in right now and that we're moving towards, I think people's movie tastes are, they're going to be ultra specified and also very broad for a lot of people. I think clearly there are people who like very specific types of movies and then also people who like to kind of explore, and I think it's a great time period for both of those fans to fully consume the media that they enjoy.
Absolutely.
The next movie that we watched is The Banshees of Inisherin. This was, like you said on our previous episode, Ethan, this was probably the funniest movie of the year. And how dark the comedy is makes it even more hilarious in my opinion. It's quite simply, you know, 1925, Inisherin, part of Ireland. There are two friends, and one of the friends no longer wants to be friends with the other. And it kind of speaks to the existentialism of relationships, as one felt like the other was not quite holding him back, but, you know, wasting what time he had left. And this very small and kind of, I guess you could describe it as childish, but I don't if you look at it as a whole. But we'll say this childish kind of bickering or conflict becomes more and more serious as the film goes on. Ethan, what were your initial thoughts of this movie?
Yeah. So I really was interested in it because obviously Martin McDonough. So well, I didn't really have I really had high expectations and they were basically met with the end product. It slowly started getting more it slowly started getting more um effed up as things went on, which is what I really enjoyed about it. Because at first I was like, this movie is beautiful. It seems so quiet and quaint. What is there to like gawk at as far as like really dark sense of humor? And but as the movie goes on, it gets more dark and possibly gets to a point where it's even darker and more screwed up than Three Billboards.
I completely agree. I mean, it starts out innocently enough, and it's like it starts off kind of quirky and funny and witty, and then it becomes like, there's still dark comedy to it, but there has like a more intense nature to it. And I do want to jump to kind of, I think one part where it's like, oh damn, like now this is very serious. But before I kind of pitch to that, I thought the acting in this, in particular by, I don't want to butcher his name, but it is I can't find this Barry. I don't know how to pronounce it. Kogan.
Barry Keoghan, I call him Barry Keegan, but it's probably not that. But it's the it fits nicely into the Barry Keoghan playing a freaky little weirdo universe.
Yes.
It was a That was somebody's review on Letterbox, and I really enjoyed it, so I just wanted to throw that in there.
I mean, he has a really unique ability to act as a strange character. And this was, I'm trying to think, it might be his most impressive role that I've seen yet. And I think the notable ones are Dunkirk and Killing of a Sacred Deer are the two that I know him quite well from. I was most impressed by this one. What about you, Ethan?
I really enjoyed his performance. I feel like the standout, and probably because he's the main character, but Colin Farrell is the standout to me. He's definitely. I think he has a chance at the best actor for the actual Oscars.
I think so
I
as
think
well.
he was so good in this movie, playing somebody who is very confused as to what just happened with this entire thing that's going on with his friend. And Brendan Gleeson is also fantastic,
Hmm.
but Colin Farrell just takes it to he's so good in the movie, and he's always good in a lot of Martin McDonough properties. He knows Martin McDonough and the way he uses tone in his movies so well, and he's able to piggyback off of that amazingly.
Yes, you're spot on. Colin Farrell was such a good actor. Just everyone felt like they played their role spectacularly well. And I want to ask you because I think I've only seen Three Billboards and this. Those are the two Martin McDonough movies, but Three Billboards seems to also fit into what I'm about to describe. It seems like his movies are really good pieces for actors to stand out with their performances. Very performance driven movies. Would you kind of agree with that based off your experience with McDonough?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and Three Billboards was big for their actors.
Mm-hmm.
Frances McDormand netted her second Oscar win. Sam Rockwell got his first nomination and win. I think Woody Harrelson was also nominated, so it was crazy for actors for Three Billboards, and it definitely shows because that movie had my favorite performance from Frances McDormand, and the other two movies she was nominated for, I don't really love. I don't love Fargo, and I don't love Nomadland. And I know I'm gonna get crucified for saying that I don't love Fargo, but it's out there. I don't like Fargo very much,
Hmm.
but I do not like Nomadland almost at all. I don't think it's a very good movie. But Three Billboards proved me wrong, and it proved to me that she's a fantastic actor.
Hmm.
And same goes for Banshees. So I feel like there are a number of potentials for Oscar wins there.
I completely agree. And I think the script of it all, the dialogue and how quick everything moved, and also like there was just little funny kind of callbacks. Like there was little bits that went on throughout sections or the entirety of the movie, like very simple, like the way that they would say, "Are you rowing?" Do you remember that? Like near the beginning of the film, Ethan, like, "Oh, it seems like you're rowing." And he's like, "I guess we are rowing." Like that entire exchange, I thought was super funny.
Yeah.
And then,
Really good at visual gags as well. I mean, there's the scene where Barry Keoghan's character Dominic is, by the way, very Irish names. Dominic is probably the most uh, American sounding name out of all of them. But there's like Patrick, there's Siobhan, there's Calm, and those are the only three I know. And Dominic, of course. But Dominic sneaks into his house and grabs alcohol, and his dad is just sitting there completely naked, and you can see his genitals are not very big. And so, in terms of visual gags, he's also really good.
yeah, and a very intense scene, and it is like not a. It was a tonal shift, but I also kind of thought it was funny. Was when Colum threw his finger at Padarak's door. It was because he had threatened it at one point in the movie. It was kind of to say how serious he was about this breakup between friends. And when he finally did it, because you didn't expect it, there was kind of like a setup and then like a bit of a bait and not bait and switch, but you thought this could maybe resolve their friendship, but it ended up being like one of the big points that proved they ultimately wouldn't be the same. I thought it was actually quite hilarious that a character would throw a recently cut off finger at someone's door. That's just such a
Yeah,
unique. I don't even know how you come up with an idea like that. It's such a weird but funny thing.
yeah, and the way that ultimately spirals it goes from friendship into absolute hatred. Like that, it's really emotional when something tragic happens um to Colin Farrell, and he goes from trying so desperately to connect again to um, now he is ultimately trying to kill him, basically.
I liked that kind of change too, because it felt like they had exhausted everything that they could do with that type of dynamic. So to have it switch, and then Colm's character not wanting to reach out and become friends, but he actually starts to look at Padarak's character in a different light, and it almost seems like it brings them closer together than they were right after the split happened. Like there was a kind of a weird respect that had been gleamed between the two. I mean, did you kind of feel that as well? And how do you like? What do you think it was trying to contextualize with that?
I'm not super sure, but yeah, you're right. You do feel a very weird sense of resolve when um, He does Colin Farrell does something almost equally horrible back to him, and it just ends in a very depressing yet very uh, calming way, a resolving way. It seems it's resolving yet kind of worrying. It very again similar to Three Billboards. Um, and I also wanted to bring this up, but Three Billboards, it was similar to Three Billboards. Banshees can it, Martin McDonagh is so good at controlling the morals of his characters, and so a lot of his characters are are neutral in their morality, but he is so good at making just righteous assholes.
Mm,
I mean, Three Billboards, you have Sam Rockwell's character, who is racist and very bigoted in his thinking, and he's just kind of a pathetic loser. Even though he does change by the end. Um, but with Banshees, there's obviously Dominic's dad,
mhm,
who has tormented Colin Farrell's character throughout the entirety, and he experiences something traumatic, which I feel like at the end of the day, the movie does have an underlying theme of trauma
mhm.
and and tragedy, and I think that's what makes it more possibly more dark than Three Billboards, and also more because it's so much more personal. Three Billboards is very from like a empathetic perspective, it is very uh sad. It's a sad movie. But Banshees is super personal and I feel very relatable in some of its some of what it's trying to say.
I agree, and I feel like there's a lot just below the surface, and I don't know, just trying to kind of crack the inner workings of some of these characters is interesting because I think they're so well written that there's a lot of depth to them, and I don't know. I kind of wonder if it's also touching on a life not fully not explored, but where all emotions aren't quite explored. And I think Column brings it to light that he's kind of gone through life without achieving or experiencing the things that he wants to achieve. And Dominic's character reaches a point where, his experiences are very limited and, something tragic happens to him. And it kind of gives you a sense of being able to see everything and that can be very common in life in this setting. And I feel like there's something to be explored there. What are your thoughts on that, Ethan?
I feel yeah, I feel like there is something there because they always pointed out that the way the way Brendan Gleeson's character Calm, the way Calm breaks it off, they constantly point out that that's something that a child would do,
Mm-hmm.
and it seems like Calm from a different perspective, it seems almost as though Calm is doing that in the same way that he thinks Colin Farrell would go about it, and himself is somewhat of a childish person,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and much younger than Brendan Gleeson. Calm, I'm sorry. He sees that Patrick is more susceptible to emotion than Calm is, and so Calm sees that, and it seems that he's trying to break it off in the same way, in a way that Patrick could understand. So that could be a perspective there.
Yeah, I I think that's interesting. I guess I didn't quite realize, but I think you're right on the money in that that isn't necessarily how Column would do it in every situation, but it was him trying to relate to Pederak's character, and also the way that Pederak tries to get back in Calm's good graces. It's like he's trying to become the version that he thinks he would like, which is kind of an interesting dynamic as well. And I thought there was kind of like a touching moment, even though it comes out of the rejection from Dominic, is that Dominic liked Pederak's character for who he was, whereas Colum obviously had begun to dislike him because of who he was. And by trying to cater himself to be Colum's friend again, he ends up losing Dominic because it's insincere, and it's also it's not like the genuine nice person that he had been up until that point. I think it's
Yeah,
interesting that they explored that dynamic.
absolutely.
Was there anything else that kind of jumped off the screen to you in this film?
Um, I not really. I just find the way Martin McDonough tells the story to be highly investing. On top of all that, it's way more investing than you would probably think.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, just because, I mean, obviously, the writing is so good, the characters and the dialogue is so well written that you could easily see this being investing. But by the time that tragic thing happens um, to Patrick, you get so emotionally invested when Patrick goes to confront Calm, because what happened to Patrick is kind of Calm's fault, but it sets off a series of events that comes across as very tragic and very um, obviously it's irrational the way he's responding to it, but you can understand where he's coming from.
Exactly. Um, I guess you kind of just brought like my mind kind of went to some of the major scenes that you were alluding to. Do you think this film kind of touches on nihilism a bit, and do you think it's prevalent to the experience of someone in this time period next to like kind of a civil war going on? Do you think that's also something that's important thematically in this film?
Um, I I don't see the nihilism per se,
Mm-hmm.
but there is a sense of peace getting interrupted because
Mm.
Inisherin is a very quiet, peaceful town, exemplified by the greens and the gorgeous shot, again, gorgeous cinematography. Um, and but the suddenness of booms and cracks going on in the far distance
Mm.
uh, is definitely something that could be exemplifying some sort of emotion struck in this small town.
I thought that there was really good cinematography in this film too. I had saw a couple letterbox reviews kind of downplaying it, but I certainly agree with you. And I think another thing that I've alluded to, I want to ask your feeling. I mean, do you think this is maybe a favorite for winning best screenplay, or do you have kind of some other films that you might think supersede it when it comes Oscar time?
I was going to say that. I was going to say that not only is it my front runner for best actor, but it's also probably going to be my front runner for best screenplay. Because the writing is so good.
I agree. I think it's definitely one of the best of the year. And I think Decision to Leave, especially when you look at kind of a plot perspective, the way that was written, I can see both of these being nominated for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it has the. I don't think I would give it my best picture. Not my best picture. My best act. Best director pick. I love Martin McDonough a lot, and I think he did a great job directing. I definitely think there's at least one other I would give best director, which is probably Tar.
Hmm.
I would probably give Tar best director if I could, and I hope that's my pick. If they do decide to um, nominate Tar, which they maybe they will, who knows? But I barely put Tar over Banshees. But Banshees is fantastic, but Tar is something extremely special.
Hmm.
So that's pretty much my lineup right now. Best actress and best director for Tar, and best actor and best screenplay for Banshees.
I'm gonna watch Tar tonight, so I am very very excited about it. Ethan, I want to ask you this: you are on the part of the world that does not get very much inclement weather. Have you had a snowfall for Christmas?
No, definitely not.
Well,
Lots of fog, lots of fog, but definitely not snow.
we had, I think at one point this weekend, it got down to negative 22 degrees. So if you ever want to switch locations, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I live in the part of the world, so it's varied. It's in the part of the country that's varied in weather, depending on where you live. Um, at least you don't live down in the south. So I'm just, I mean, the south is. I think they're still at 70, 70 something degrees, and right now, like Florida and Alabama, Mississippi. Do they ever get snow? I don't think so.
I saw something on the news. I think Orlando got down to 22 degrees
Really?
Friday. Yeah, there was this. It was a bad winter storm. It and it hit us very very hard. But have you ever had a white Christmas where you're living now?
Like, what do you mean by White Christmas?
The snowfall.
Oh, no. Like specifically where I live,
Hmm.
uh, we don't really get that. You'd have to go up to the mountains, which is not far from here.
Okay.
Like like an hour drive, and you'll get some snow.
Oh, that's actually pretty awesome for people who like that. Which I'll like growing up, I did like snow. Like it's cool to sled ride.
Mhm.
It's cool to have like snowball fights, but for like 99% of the year, I would be fine with like 70 degrees and like maybe a little bit of a breeze. But it's not what the weather gods have in mind for my part of the country.
Well,
Eh,
hopefully it'll get better.
yep, sooner or later. Let me ask you this, Ethan. Any final thoughts and a rating on this movie?
Um, I uh, I love this movie. It's one of my favorites of the year. Not Decision to Leave level, but it is masterfully written, masterfully acted, and masterfully directed. I give it a 4.5 out of 5.
I'm right there with you. 4.5 out of 5. As of right now, and this is prior to watching Decision to Leave again prior to watching Tar. And there's definitely a lot of other movies in 2022 that I need to watch. But at this stage, this is my favorite movie of the year so far. And it makes me want to go and watch the rest of McDonough's filmography. So, really great stuff. And I appreciate the recommendation, Ethan, because I think for people who aren't familiar with his work, the look that this film gives off, just looking at the poster and kind of, reading the summation, I really don't think people would expect it to be as funny as it is. I mean, it is literally, laugh out loud funny, at least in my viewing, throughout.
Yeah, very similar to Three Billboards. There's some funny moments to it as well.
Yeah. And Decision to Leave, another great. I'm very, very happy that you recommended that movie as well. And again, another director that I really want to check out more of their work in Park Chan Wook. So this was, I think, in comparison to last week, everything, everywhere, all at once, a very solid movie. But those two, they don't quite stack up to these two combined. They just felt like there's a lot of weight to these films that they feel like they could be the types of movies that really stand the test of times and are known decades from now for how good they were.
Absolutely. I know a lot of people love Everything Everywhere and would probably call it the best movie of 2022. Um, it's definitely the most balanced as far as big blockbuster filmmaking and actual um, deep investing storytelling.
I think that's the best way to put it. And I think that's why it is so accessible to a large number of viewers. And that might work in its favor come Oscar season. So, obviously, despite both of us not having it as our favorite movie, I think enough people like these two movies, I could see a lot of kind of mainstream movie consumers, it just not quite, them not fully enjoying it. And on the flip side, enjoying everything everywhere all at once. So that might be one of the reasons that, AO wins Best Picture, but I guess we shall see.
Feel like it won't, just because it's too much like a Marvel movie, and they never really nominate those.
I think that I think there is a very good point to be made. It's almost too much. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? And that, like, obviously Marvel has that same kind of feeling to it. So if that does come to fruition, I think that is probably the reason behind it. I think you would be correct on that. But I'm excited to keep exploring some of 2022's best with you, Ethan. And I very much appreciate you coming on and talking about these two great movies with me today, man. I really appreciate it.
of course.
And for those who made it to the end, Ethan has a YouTube channel. Film Junkie is the name. He has a analysis of Chinatown, and he's got short films on his channel as well. I encourage you all to check them out. Ethan, I know you have a project that you have been kind of, putting some thought into, and I believe possibly even started writing the script for. Would you like to give a tease for that idea? And if not,
Uh,
that's perfectly fine.
well, I actually recorded something different from what I was originally planning. So I'm still going to do a ranking of David Lynch films. I have a script for that that I need to flesh out a little more. But I wanted to talk about a specific list that was recently updated for what
Mm,
this specific website considers to be the greatest movies of all time, and the number one.
yes.
I got some thoughts about it,
I
so I
um
definitely want to make a video about it.
I am so on board for that, and I might even sit through the 3 and some odd hours of that movie to watch your analysis of it. I am very much looking forward to that. I think that would be a very, very interesting video for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, I cannot wait to watch those, Ethan. Uh, that sounds great, and obviously, you probably more so than anyone I know are a huge fan of David Lynch, and his films are so very just off the wall, and there's so many interpretations and deep meanings behind everything,
Mhm.
that I really really want to watch that video as well, because I felt like they're always great conversation pieces, any piece of cinema that he's touched, because of everything that he puts into it. So that is a very I'm really glad that you are doing a video like that.
Absolutely.
I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you again, Ethan, and thank you all for joining us. This will be all from us for today, but we will catch you again on the Flippity Floop. Bye, y'all.